Okay, so I've decided to chop this up into smaller videos. Makes it a bit easier, I think. So we're going to start on the space scene. So hopefully you've got a black canvas and it should be dry. I'm going to use some white acrylic and some blue acrylic. So I've got a bit of both there. Just water it down a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to take a medium sort of size brush, see what size it is there, and I'm going to take some of the white, make sure it's fairly watery. Okay, now I'm going to put a planet in at the bottom right here, as I like doing. I'm right-handed, so I can always do curves easy from this side. But you don't have to do it freehand. You can either use a, well, one thing I use sometimes is a bin lid. Another idea is if you're working on a smaller canvas than me, you could use maybe a plate. So anyway, you get the gist. Just use something to make your circle. Me myself, I just use my wrist or my elbow. So if I were to do a smaller planet, I'd use my wrist as the pivot point, and then I can get the circle, and it's fairly accurate. But I'm going to go a bit bigger here, so I'm using my elbow rather than my wrist. I think the knack is just trying to keep your elbow fairly stationary and use a pivot to give yourself a nice circle. This, you can scale this upwards as well. If you're doing a really large circle, you just use your shoulder as the pivot. Anyway, so that's the outer edge of the planet. Just one second, I'll move this out of the way. Okay. So take a bit more white. Now you're happy, if you're happy with that line, you can start filling in a little bit more like this. Be careful not to stray over the edge that way. Now I'm going to start adding some blue. Very pale at first, so more white than blue, obviously. And as I get further this way, it's going to start gradually getting darker and darker with more blue. And again, I'm not too bothered about smooth brush strokes because there's going to be cloud layers going over this. Just a little bit bright that, but so then I'll just give it some semicircular strokes over the top just to bring it together a bit. Wondered what that noise was. Hopefully you can still see that. So as you can see, I'm fairly quickly plotted in a big planet there. Now you can go crazy, you could use something for a circle, maybe a cup or a lid or something, and you could easily put another planet in here or a couple of moons in there, whatever turns you on, whatever you fancy doing. I'm going to keep it a bit simple with this one though for now. Okay, so I'm going to let this corner dry. I'm going to not use this brush for that, so I'll put this in there. Just find a big brush again. just have lots and lots and lots of cheap brushes, and I just use them, and I'll probably wash them once a day, and I might have to wash 40-50 brushes at a time. You know, I could be very careful with each individual brush and wash it after use and everything, but I tend to just put them in a pot of water like this. Look, I've got another one there that's half full of water, and they're all just soaking basically. I'll wash them all at some point. Like I said, the brushes are cheap enough. Right, I'm going to try to put some nebula and some clouds in the background here. So I'm going to start off with the darker blue rather than lightening it up with white. Oh, I got a little bit of white on there, I didn't need to. Okay, so with this, again, if you look, the end of the brush is really haphazard and rough because it's an old brush, but it suits this sort of thing perfectly. So what you can do, you can just start dabbing in. And again, it's very random, they're almost like clouds. And as this dries, you won't be able to see it as much. The blue is quite weird when it's on black. See there, it looks quite visible, but as soon as it's dry, you'll barely see that. Yeah, and there's no right or wrong. I tend to work like this. Maybe I should switch it up a bit. Maybe I'm getting a bit predictable. I try to spin the brush in my hand as I'm going, that way I'm not repeating the same pattern from the end of the brush too much. And don't worry if you blob too much paint on like I just did there, you can always just spread it out. Some more paint on my brush. No, you don't have to copy what I'm doing. I like blue. I'm actually colourblind, and blue is one of the colours what I'm not affected in, so I really do like the colour blue. But you can go crazy, you can put all sorts of colours in here you'd like, reds and pinks and everything. Sometimes though, less is more, and just a few little faint clouds in the background can be far more effective than just overworking it. Around here where you've got to be a little bit careful, trying not to go over the white at the edge of the planet, because you just have to keep going over it again. I'm fairly happy with that so far. Okay, I think let's just be really corny and just put a Death Star in there. Why not? So just a little bit of white, a little bit of black to make yourself a grey. I like to put a bit of blue in with the grey as well, because military ships and things like that, the grey what they use always tends to be a little bit blue. And again, for this bit, whatever you're most comfortable doing, one thing you could do, I'll tell you what, I'll show you a couple of tricks. One trick is to get, say, an old cup or a lid or something what's disposable, and just get your paint and paint around the edge of the lid, so all the edge has got a nice little bit of paint on. see there's a nice perfect circle. I just need to work on the inside. Right, it's quite a bit further away than I wanted, but we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. Right, so far it seems as though the light's coming in from the left hand side of the picture. That's why this side of the planet's brighter and it's getting darker that way. So we need to carry on that theme with this planet here. So like I said, mix a bit of the grey with a touch of blue. And we're going to start quite light at this edge, not going outside of the line what we've just created. And then slowly as we come to this side, you start adding a little bit more black and just darken it up a little bit. You can see there. See there, it looks quite rough now, so with semicircular strokes, just very lightly blend the whole thing in. And once you get to the midway point, do your strokes the opposite way. And there we've got quite a simple circle, ready to be a Death Star. Or you could make it a small moon, put some little craters in, I'm not sure, whatever you fancy doing. I think we'll keep it as a Death Star. Okay, don't worry about these little nitty gritty bits like up here. I've got a large brush at the moment, so you don't want to be going in and trying to get it too accurate. You can always come back in later when we're doing highlights and things like that, and we can always neaten up all these edges. Okay, so while I've got the black paint here, just get myself a smallish brush. Roughly guesstimate where halfway is and give yourself a very faint line across the middle. Again, using this pivot to give you semicircles, using your wrist or sometimes the elbow depending on the size. But here, let's say it's just this part in my hand. You get it with practice, you get it with practice. There we go, that's the middle line. And also the Death Star has a large shooty point. So we're just putting it in for now. We'll get the shade right in a minute. That's that. Right, let's do some stars. Okay, so you need some white paint. It needs to be fairly runny. And you need a brush with very stiff bristles. The stiffer the better. You can use a toothbrush if you want. A toothbrush will give you a very fine spray doing this as well. But what we're going to do, we're going to mix the white paint until it's quite runny. Not too runny though, because then the stars what we're going to put on are just going to drip down the paint, drip down the canvas. What does help at this point is having the canvas flat. That way if you do have it too runny, they're not going to run, they're just going to dry in place. But for this video's purposes, I'm going to have to do it here. But don't worry too much if you get things wrong. So don't overload the brush. Just enough so it's not dripping everywhere. And then, again, making sure you're somewhere where you're not too worried about splashes, because this does tend to go all over. Just lightly flick on some stars. out certain nebula and go really close this time and get a lot of stars in there and follow the track, follow the course what the clouds are taking, and then it looks like each one's, you see what I'm trying to do, you can see what I'm trying to do. And the closer you go, the more concentrated they'll be, and if you pull away you can get a more of a spread. Now while I've got the white on the brush, without leaning on the canvas now, because lots of this is wet and you don't want to be smudging it. Now you do need to have a steady hand, unless you can lean on something away from the canvas. And I'm just going to touch this edge with some white, just to neaten up that edge. And then if the light's coming in from the left, and this is a concave ball, then this side's going to be in shadow and this side's going to be catching the light, so we get some highlight on this side. And don't be scared to use your fingers sometimes, just to blend things in a bit. Again, while I've got some white paint here, I'm going to find another brush. Again, for me, an old, scuffed up, messed up brush is ideal for this purpose. It doesn't really matter what size, bigger helps, slightly bigger helps. If you go too small, you end up working away too much. Okay, so now from this edge, first of all I'm going to use that same technique with the wrist or the elbow to get this semicircle, and I'm just going to touch that edge again with the white, and then I'm going to that taper into the middle sort of thing. I think that's the right word for what I've done. So I'm travelling less and less as I come down, and pressing less and less. So that gives it a look like there's light coming in from the top. Now let's just randomly put some clouds in here. Yeah, so it can be daunting just going straight in and putting clouds in, and they always look terrible at first. But don't worry too much, just try to be random with your strokes. Spinning the brush helps here and there, so nothing looks the same. And so I'm going over the paint again and pushing, well, just feathering outwards. This is quite tricky. I've never had to really describe what I'm doing before. I just plug away and paint. So probably found myself saying basically a hell of a lot. I noticed from the earlier video I seem to use that word a lot. So again, as you come towards this end of the canvas, don't reload the brush, just use the brush as it's drying and getting less paint on it, and that way you're automatically going to get fainter and fainter clouds. So as you load the brush up, start at this edge, work this way, and that way it's always going to get dimmer and dimmer over this way, which works with how we've worked out the light coming into this picture. Again, there's no right or wrong. Clouds can be any shape, any formation. You didn't even have to put the clouds on. Just the fade what I had beforehand would have done the trick. It can look just as effective. Sometimes less is more. Another thing we can do now, just right, I'm thinking the spaceship what I'm going to put in, I'm pretty sure I'm going to put the Falcon in because it's fairly quick and fairly easy. I'm going to put it in somewhere here, that way it's got a nice feel to the painting I think, and it doesn't matter which angle of the ship you put in it should look okay. So I'm going to leave this space and not work too much around here, but all the rest of this I'm thinking now while I've got the white, use the butt end of the brush and just place in some heavier stars, some more vibrant stars. Again, be sparing because it's easy to start to look repetitive, even though you're trying to be random. It's too easy to put too many things in and just make it look too much of a pattern. Anyway, that I'm happy with that so far. Okay, another thing you can do while you've got the back end of the brush with the paint on it, again lean in, try not to smudge any of the stars you've already done, and I'm just going to use that edge to gently, and I'm dabbing and I'm scraping, but I'm keeping in that black line, so these are meant to represent the lights of the Death Star. And it's Death Star 1 we're doing here. Death Star 2 is just as easy, you do the same circle, all this, but then, and this Death Star 2 does take a bit of reference to it, even for myself, and then you just cut out here all the construction parts where you can actually see through it. And I think Death Star 2 is a little bit of a different shade as well. It's not as grey. Seems way more blue, but anyway, that's how we've got so far. So I'm going to stop this video here and I'm going to let this dry, and I'm going to have a look for some reference pieces for the Millennium Falcon that we're going to put in the middle. Now remember, you don't have to use the same reference piece as me, but I'm going to pick something fairly simple. So yeah, that's it for now.